I don't know if you guys want to do it, but it would be interesting to say, okay, Fox News. Hi, uh, hi. This is the Old Farts, otherwise known as Adventures in Technology. Uh, we were thinking about what we were going to talk about tonight, and as a starting point was maybe the Dominion suit against Fox News. Um, Paul, why don't you sort of summarize?
Well, there's a $1.3 billion suit against Fox News for um, putting out false information uh, about the election and the Dominion machines. Fox News says that they're faulty and caused the Republicans to lose uh, millions of votes in lots of different elections. And the three guys, Hannity, Carlson, and Laura Ingraham, all three of them knew that there was nothing wrong, that Trump actually did lose the election, and there was nothing wrong with the machines. If there was anything, it was just a couple of votes here and there. But they kept persisting that the machines were bad, and that's why Trump lost. And this lawsuit is I guess it's going on right now, and they have um, text messages between at least those three and other executives at Fox, including Rupert Murdoch, all saying that there was nothing wrong with the machines, but it was advantageous for them to put it on air to say that the machines were broken. And that's why Trump lost.
Well, actually, my understanding was that they were saying that Dominion was deliberately changing votes. It wasn't accidental; it was
Right.
deliberate, which I think is a totally different issue entirely.
Yeah.
But
Dominion is claiming that they've suffered greatly because of it. They lost business because people don't want to buy their machines now, and so that's the root of the lawsuit.
right.
And
Well,
it doesn't look good for Fox News
the
because
stuff
they
that,
have
yeah,
emails from these people saying that the people that they were talking to were crazy.
yeah.
They didn't know what they were talking about.
My understanding is just from listening to radio commentators that defamation is a really hard thing to prove, particularly when you're talking about the media. Um, although I tend to agree with you, and I think in many cases the people I was listening to agree that when you have emails saying, we know this is BS, but if we say it's BS, then we'll lose viewers.
Yeah, they were afraid of losing viewers to other um, Republican platforms.
Right.
But from the being a devil's advocate, isn't it First Amendment right for them to say whatever they want to say?
I think it is. They have the right to say what they believe, and there's nothing wrong with that. But privately, they said that they were basically lying on air, and they have the emails from all of these hosts that said that they intentionally did lie on air.
But the second part of the devil being devil's advocate, I think I did talk to Bob about it earlier. That would this be consider it is actually the factual thing that whatever is in those emails and in deposition is really correct, or is it because they have been deposed, so it ought to be correct?
I'm not sure I understood.
No, what I'm saying is, given that it is, again, it's reporting by media, is it given, and how trustworthy is it that it is being reported correctly? How about that?
The emails are part of the court filing. They've been made public.
Right.
So
And-
hence they ought
So
to be
it's not,
correct.
it's not one, or, it's not one, competing, news organization. This is from the court, what's come out in court.
But what I was also reading is that Murdoch was being questioned. I don't know who was questioning him, and he was also talking about Bertramo and the other guy. Both of them, he was talking about how they were also saying things which were not right. So that's why once I saw that written out, that's what I was wondering: is that reporting really correct, or is it actually coming from the real deposition, or is it basically reporting the way they think it should be? I don't know.
I think, I'm reasonably sure, but maybe somebody knows better, that this is actually testimony in the trial. But the real issue is, I can say pretty much anything I want to pretty much anybody I want. The problem is, if what I'm saying causes unreasonable harm to another person, and we can show that not only isn't it true, but it's done for the purpose of creating the harm, then that's an exception to free speech.
So that means they have to somehow prove that the Dominion has been really harmed.
Right. And I think
So
that's what Paul was saying when they lost business. And then did the people at Fox know it was not correct? Well, that's what the emails are about.
Privately, they have the emails of them talking to each other, knowing that they were lying on air. But they did it for the purpose of maintaining their audience.
But at the same time, I think it may be I don't know how. I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea. As Bob pointed out, that it may be hard to actually prove completely and win, and that's a key thing, to win the lawsuit. But at the same time, that's one aspect. The second aspect is, given that all the information has come out, how does that impact moving forward the status of Fox News and all the folks who believed them?
Chuck, you may want to chime in at this point.
I want to say that on my part, I just believe it's too premature to get deep into all of this discussion on that. I know the host of these shows, including some hosts on some other Fox shows, are prohibited from talking about it. And I would like to have an opportunity to hear what Tucker Carlson and Hannity and Laura Ingraham have to say for themselves about their part in all this. And I'm just not ready to get well involved in that. The only other thing I want to say is that the Fox audience is still, in almost all cases, still number one.
Yes.
Almost in almost all segments. from about at least about 5 o'clock on. So I don't think it's apparently hasn't hurt their audience too much. Anyways, that's all I have to say about it at this point.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
I have a
it's
question.
not whether it's hurt Fox's audience, it's whether it's hurt Dominion and their sales. That's what they're complaining about. That's the
Right, and I don't
basis
know.
of the lawsuit.
There has been some other states, other politicians from other states that have complained about Dominion machines before in previous elections. So it's not something new about being some question, as far as I know, on their validity of their machines. So again, I don't want to get involved at this point.
Okay, well, the question I had was, if Dominion was the machine that was counting the votes in Massachusetts, would you feel that there was a potential problem? And or would you say, given all the testing that's been done in multiple states, that Dominion has been proven to be a accurate tabulator of votes?
I believe there's been evidence in a numbers of elections that use of any machines has led to some questionability on some elections. And I know there have been some Democrats that have complained about previous elections by the use of some machines. I'm not going to say necessarily whether they were Dominion or who they were, but I'm just old-fashioned. I'd rather see the voting being done without the machines.
Well, do you realize even in Massachusetts, where we have paper ballots, they are counted by machine? Are you comfortable with that as an approach?
I haven't given it a lot of thought, Bob.
Oh, okay. Well, it was. I think were it me with a question, the fact that there have been hand recounts in many states by groups that might have reason to want to make sure that the count was in fact incorrect and want to change the results, and none of them have come up with anything to indicate that Dominion is doing anything other than exactly what it purports to do, which is count the votes. Given that, any doubts that I might have had in the past, and remember, I'm a computer guy, so I can think of 1,000 different ways to jigger a computer. I would say that it works. It does what it's supposed to do, but that's again me. I'm more interested in somebody who might have some issues and their reaction. And it appears that you just don't feel comfortable. And
I might be wrong, but I think the country of France gave up on machines completely and went to hand counting.
Really,
recently. Maybe possibly the last election, but I'd have to verify that. But I thought that's what I had heard.
But here, as Bob did point out, I mean, there have been hand counts to confirm what the machines did, and not a major issue showed up, although they were contested. So that kind of shows that maybe Dominion machines were not really at fault. But even then, that's my question was, does it really impact Park's audience? Obviously, as Chuck pointed out, it is not. So that means whatever Fox News is saying, folks don't mind them saying whatever they are saying. So that's where the revenue is. So they are exercising their First Amendment, I think. But at the same, of course, that's proving that Dominion was wrong. And I don't know how far that can be proved, but I don't know the law. So.
Well, the First Amendment does have limitations, like the classic, you can't yell fire in a theater and cause people to get hurt, just for the heck of it.
But it's
You know,
only, my understanding, Paul, that you're correct, but it's predicated on what you just said. And lastly, that people have to get hurt. You can I believe you can call for fire in a theater, but as long as nobody gets hurt, then there's no penalty.
I would agree with that. And oh, by the way, you can yell fire in a crowded theater if there is in fact a fire.
Correct.
By the way, just as an aside, I just looked it up, and France has always done paper ballots and manual counts. So
Okay.
you were correct on that. But in this particular case, well, actually, I have another question, which is probably a wider question than we dealt with up till now. Can someone who purports to be a news person, as opposed to a comedian, who gets on and essentially says, my job is to make you laugh, and therefore I can say almost anything. But if I purport to be a journalist telling you what the facts are, can I tell lies, deliberate lies? I know that presidents, past and present, have not been happy with comedians who would get on TV and say nasty things about them. But to my knowledge, that's not illegal, immoral, or fattening.
Oh, maybe that's it.
And they may feel hurt if you say it's something that I am bothered by. I can say I'm hurt. At what point does it stop being comedy or just general discussion? And at what point does it become defamation, where people have a right to get recourse?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is that what I was going to say is that Hannity, Ingram, they are Ludops. They're not journalists. They are commentators, as far as I could tell. And would they really fall into that quote unquote comedy club, or is that because they are not journalists, so they could interpret things as they see fit? Wouldn't that protect them?
Well, I think that's really what my question is. At some point, I can claim that I am a journalist and I have a platform, old farts, and I can say mean and nasty things. At what point does the person I'm saying mean and nasty things about have a right to come back and say, wait a minute, slow the hell down? Not only are you hurting me emotionally, but you're hurting me financially. In the United States, I think finance is much more important than emotions. But I don't know.
Dominion's complaint is that they lost business to the tune of $1.3 billion. That's what the complaint is.
Then they have to prove that again. First off, I guess they have to prove it.
Right. Of course they have to prove it, and they have to come in with canceled orders.
Or
when they come in,
or orders that they didn't get. Remember, Dominion didn't have every state, and at some point,
well, this is worldwide. This is worldwide.
Yeah, but at some point they're going to go and they make a sales presentation, and the people that they're trying to sell to are going to say, no, we heard this, that, and the other thing in the United States. That's harder to prove. How do you prove a negative? I didn't get this contract, and I think I should have gotten it, or I should have gotten X percentage of the contracts. I don't know how you prove that. Canceled orders is fairly obvious.
Yes, I mean,
I
that's
think
unless.
that's what they
yeah.
were claiming. I assume that's what they were claiming. I don't know.
I don't
I
know either.
assume that they had orders in and then the orders were canceled because uh, the general belief was their machines didn't work
You know,
because of that.
obviously, you know what happens, Paul, when any of us assume something.
Yeah,
Okay,
you and me.
I mean,
that's right.
see, that is
It
the
happens
problem.
to
They
all of
have
us.
to, they probably, not they probably, they will have to show canceled orders. But then the caveat, even in canceled orders, how do you prove that canceled orders were because of what? Is there a straight line to prove that, or it's still crooked?
I think you could probably depose the person who canceled the order and ask them straight out, was the controversy over the past number of years a reason why you decided not to continue with Dominion? What would be even more telling, and I have no way of knowing this at all, would be if they canceled Dominion and they brought in another voting machine company. So, but again, I don't know that. I assume from just
Well,
what
there we
I've
go.
been reading,
Another assumption.
if we went with only the things we absolutely knew, we would be sitting in our basements, huddled under a blanket, because there's no guarantee that the sun's going to come up tomorrow, or that the furnace is not going to go off immediately. You make reasonable assumptions based on the past and your
It's
confidence.
available, you know what I mean?
Is Pat Marino on or no?
No, he can't participate because of I'm beginning to think the problem is that his computer didn't have a built-in camera and or a microphone.
So he can do with using his phone.
I had suggested he do that, and I don't think he did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was not paying attention.
Getting back to
I might call him tomorrow and see if I can come over and look at just his computer setup.
yeah.
That'd be a good
I don't know
idea.
if you can hear me, Pat, but you know, I'll try to make contact with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't promise tomorrow because my understanding is it's going to be kind of nasty tomorrow.
I thought it was going to be
Yeah.
tomorrow night.
Well, virtual
Oh.
tomorrow.
Okay. Chuck, you said you heard it was going to be nice tomorrow?
I thought it was going to be late afternoon, but I could be
Ah.
wrong.
I don't know. My wife sees bad weather anywhere in the country and starts battening down the hatches here. So it's hard to tell. But
I have a different question. I'm curious. Do any of you have any participation in TikTok, or have anybody that you know directly with TikTok?
I don't.
I bought a phone, an iPhone recently, and I just got it to work about 2 weeks ago. I bought it in October. I just got it to work about 2 weeks ago. I went into the iPhone place, and I used to have an icon, a TikTok icon, and I went to delete it, and I couldn't find it anymore. I think the iPhones got rid of them.
Well, I'm not aware. I don't have anything to do with TikTok, so I presume that it's an app that you have on your phone. But
Right.
Yeah.
you know,
And I think you have to buy it, but I don't know. I don't have it. I don't know anybody who does have it. But I was under the impression that you had to buy it. It wasn't something that was given free.
I think it's given free, I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
I can't, you know, I know nothing about it other than its ability to go through your phone and pick out things it wants to see.
So
And
dangerous.
that's just terrible.
Well,
I mean-
I mean, it has to be still operational because it's been, I believe, been prohibited by any federal agencies, politicians, to be able to,
Kids use it.
to be
Kids use it
using.
all the time.
Right,
So,
but
and they're trying to make restrictions on children being able to use it. I think there's a push in Congress to try to put some limitations on children using it, especially
Right.
really young children.
Um, eh, I've heard the same thing. My understanding is that TikTok can, I don't know that it does look at all the other things on your phone, but I do know that it captures keystrokes. So there's a potential security issue. But I can tell you that any computer software, and anything on your phone is computer software, has the potential with the right programming to do what we're claiming TikTok is doing.
Well, TikTok's doing much more than that.
Okay.
So, I mean, they got programs on TikTok. My understanding is that are geared towards children.
Mm-hmm.
I presume that it's, you know, video on the, you can pull up on your phone, and they're giving instructions to children to do certain stunts or various things that can be injurious to a child at times, or other things just to influence their thinking about whatever against what goes on in this country, versus what they use it for in China is they use it as a positive thing, especially for children.
Well, I can't speak
I think the
to.
problem.
Go ahead, Paul.
I think the problem is when it's on your phone and a kid uses it. If that kid sends an email or something to their parent or anybody else, then the information can be gleaned from that and downloaded in China.
Yeah, I'm
Not
sure
just
that.
not just the email, but other information could
Yeah,
be.
I'm sure that's a lot of stuff they can do.
Well,
Yeah.
the question is, do they do it? The other thing is, in terms of
Why not?
YouTube does exactly the same thing as TikTok. I guess TikTok's more fun. But I can remember a few years ago, and I don't remember I think it was Facebook, but it may have been something else. Remember the ice bucket challenge? It was for a charity.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you factually that there was a potential for harm because at one point I did it. One of my neighbors was filming it for me, and the ice hit me on the head, and it hurt. She thought
That
was
explains it.
hysterical. Huh?
That explains it.
Now I understand.
Yes.
Well, I heard earlier today, I heard a Brendan Carr from the FCC. He is an FCC commissioner, saying that the Chinese-owned app poses as a national security concern.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not on a small scale. There's other. I mean, it's a higher level of concerns here.
Right. Well, that's why they banned it from all federal phones.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's being banned by other groups as well. I know about the federal phones, but other groups I think have also banned it. I'm not real happy with the idea that you ban a piece of software or a piece of hardware purely because it might pose a problem. but also if you wait until you find out about the harm, it may be too late. So I'm of two minds on that.
I mean, to your point, Bob, Google does the same thing. The browsers we use every day, that's how they direct us to certain news items or certain YouTube or certain
Right.
things to buy. That's what Amazon does. That's what Google does. So they do collect our keystrokes, our preferences, and then direct us to certain items according to those. That means this is constantly happening because we are using internet the way we are using. But I don't know how far TikTok has gone to do that. But this is a normal thing which we take for granted. That life becomes easier because we use those browsers and things work.
Right. I mean, I just a few moments ago used Google to look up and find out that France is all paper ballot with hand counting. If I had to do that without a browser, I probably wouldn't because I'm too lazy. But even if I did, it would take forever.
Obviously, yes.
So yeah, I don't know. There's so much. I one of these people who believes that democracy is the best way for groups to manage themselves. But at the same time, it assumes that everybody has kind of an agreement as to what's appropriate and what isn't, what's legal and what isn't. And if some group doesn't follow those norms, then democracy becomes an excuse to do whatever you want. So I think we have the same thing in terms of this software, where you're not supposed to do that, and Apple and other software company and other platform companies do their best to protect the platform. But anything that complicated, there's always going to be a hole of some kind.
Well, the practical thing is that you have Facebook, for example, or Twitter. You do create groups based on what they are doing, and unknowingly, we all fall into those groups, and they become echo chambers. And I don't know how, although everybody complains about it, but they continue using Facebook, they continue using Twitter, and you have all these things happening at the same time. I don't know what the solution is.
Well, the problem is that people want to be in groups. I want to be in a group that tells me what's happening with my family and with my friends. And so it's a voluntary group. Other people want to be in groups that perhaps echo more of their political philosophies. And they have a perfect right to do that. I think the problem comes when, and we get back to the Dominion case, when some of the groups are created based on lies, falsehoods, and they punish anyone who doesn't accept those falsehoods. The obvious punishment is they kick them out of the group.
Well, obviously, even Facebook and Twitter groups have been created by default based on what you prefer, and a lot of people prefer certain ideology. They join and they form a chamber for themselves. So it's their fundamental right. But then how can you blame somebody else, some other group?
Well, again, I think it gets back to the harm issue. By the way, I want to make the point that these old farts try as hard as possible to have as many different viewpoints. Even people who don't agree in many fundamental things, because I don't want to be part of an echo chamber. So that's an aside. Send your contributions into Burlington Cable Access. Uh, in any case, uh, I don't know. I don't. Do we have any other things where we can think of ways that we can prevent people from taking advantage of the opportunity to lie, cheat, etc.? Bernie Madoff, I'd use that as an example simply because he was a respected man, had a tremendous position, was well known, well trusted, and he used that to steal billions of dollars. At what? How do you prevent that without basically saying uh, nobody can talk to anybody else for fear that they're going to say or do something that will uh, potentially cause harm? Okay.
You can't. So, and so you have to use your judgment when you're dealing with other individuals, whether or not you check into their backgrounds or whatever, to make sure that you're not being hoodwinked into something that that you didn't know about.
So that means there's only a small group of people that I can really communicate with, because even the people that I know reasonably well, I've been talking to fairly steadily for many years. I don't know much about the real background in terms of detail. And oh, by the way, they don't know much of anything about my background. So at what point do we, I'll use the word again, assume uh, that people are as they purport to be so that you can interact with them?
But if you remember the case of Jim Jones, a lot of people assumed he was a genuine so-called prophet, I guess, and a lot of people joined him. And I don't know whether they knew more about him or he knew more about his followers, and he took all of them with him.
But if you go back a little ways, he established whatever we're going to call it thing, and he helped a great many addicts and people who had serious problems, and that was the basis of the loyalty they had to him. And maybe he got carried away. Based on what little I know, and which isn't a great deal, it started as something that was very good and was considered one of the most positive things in San Francisco. And then it's not so good anymore. And eventually it got to the point where he told everybody, drink this Kool-Aid and die. And oh, by the way, give your kids the thing because they can't be trusted to do it on their own. And a great many people went along with it.
Oh, let's deal with something more current as far as this whole thing with COVID-19.
Okay.
You know, you've got the different things coming out, and you know, you had people saying that there was Fauci was lying or distorting things, and then you get Fauci trying to vouch for himself, saying he's not. So how do you decide who's telling the truth?
Well,
What are you going to base? You're going to essentially base your life. We're going to essentially base our life on whether whether what this person is saying is true or not, depending on your age and your health condition. You may be risking more than you know, or either way.
Right. Well, again, there are people who are saying that the vaccine had no value whatsoever. And when you quote numbers at them, they say you got these numbers from people who have a reason for making up numbers. At somewhere along the line, and I think this is critical for any democracy, we have to agree what facts are, whatever they are, and then you can interpret them. I'm a great believer that a fact is very nice. 32 degrees is a fact. What does it mean? It depends on, are you talking about a refrigerator? Are you talking about outside? Are you talking about your house? Are you talking about your body temperature? Context becomes critical, but at least we agree there's 32 degrees. Right now, we're not even willing to do that. And I don't know how to make that work. When you have a group, the state of Florida, the state government of Florida says vaccines are at best useless.
It's not
Yet,
only not only them saying that, it's much larger scale than just one state.
well,
Now, Oman, you're in the medical field.
Mhm.
I've heard people saying that some doctors are pressured into saying that the vaccines are the way to go, and I can sense that some of these people that I've heard about, some of these doctors, feel their careers are at risk if they don't go along with the hierarchy.
Well, so far as I know, the biology of the vaccines is what tells us biology of vaccines is that it will lessen the once people get vaccinated against a certain organism, it will lessen the severity of symptoms and protect them from essentially become so sick that they might die. So in that sense, if you look at vaccines are not meant to prevent infections completely. They are meant to protect, give you a mechanism so that your body has already seen a replica of the organism, so that once you get the actual thing, the body has some mechanism to fight it off, so that body does not die. And given that, we know that the vaccines that have been given against COVID, they work because they do prevent severe illness, and they do prevent particularly serious illness in the people who are highly vulnerable. And so that has really helped. Those are the data that show us, and I don't think I at least personally do not know anybody in the medical field who feels pressured to say what I'm just now saying, because that's the biology of the vaccines. And so that way, but you can always bring up things that, well, you know what, if somebody got a vaccine and they did not get complete protection and they got very severely sick, and that's also possible, because we are all different, and the vaccine provided to general population is not really tailored to each individual. It's kind of a overall general dose, which the trials show that will work for most of the people.
Well,
So that's what the biology is.
Well, based on what you're saying right there, for the government or a government agency to require everybody, everybody to take this particular vaccine, is that good policy?
If you consider a pandemic, then it is a good. Public health policy is based on what is going to kill most of the people. So if you have a polio which crippled a lot of people, so the policy is well, maybe you should give what we should give polio vaccine early enough so that folks don't get the disease. And so that's why public policy is based on those numbers. And similarly, you have vaccines against rubella. You have vaccines against whooping cough. I mean, you have measles. I mean, that's because, and those vaccines have really increased the potential of people to live rather than be dead.
So where do you draw the line on which vaccines do you require, and that you must take, versus ones that might not be as effective?
Well,
Who makes that decision?
okay, polio, I don't believe, I don't know, but I don't believe is required. Measles, etc., is required only if you want to go to public schools. If you're in the armed services and you're going to get deployed, you are required to take certain vaccines to protect you against diseases that are prevalent wherever it is you're going.
I understand there were thousands of service people that were thrown out of the military because they wouldn't take the
Right.
COVID vaccine.
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
Regardless of where they were being deployed.
Well, I think the logic, again, I can't quote anybody right now, but I think the logic was that if you were commingling with other people and you had COVID, you were more likely, if you didn't take the vaccine, to pass it on to somebody else. So you were threatening the ability of the unit to operate. That, I think, was the logic of requiring that the service take that vaccine and many others. Again, I can't tell you what others, but I'm sure that if you went into the service a year ago, you had to show that they had certain vaccines or you had to take them.
I heard a doctor talking a couple of days ago saying that a young child, particularly a young female at the age of 12, will have to take 60 shots of different vaccines during her lifetime.
But
I don't know how many are there, but when you look at how different vaccines protect individuals, because early on, the younger patients are more likely to die because of some of the childhood diseases. And that's where those vaccines are important, because you don't want a child suffering from croup so that they have their throat sealed essentially and they can't breathe. You can't allow that. So, I mean, that's why public policies show up.
And there are a certain number of people who cannot take a given vaccine.
Well, that's a different issue.
Allergic. So my understanding is that the people who can't take an individual vaccine can be protected if nobody around them has the disease.
Yeah, that's the herd immunity.
Yeah, measles. A couple of years ago, there was a big push that people didn't want to take the measles vaccine anymore, and the net result was a lot of measles cases were suddenly showing up. Not only for the people who didn't take the vaccine because they didn't want to, but people who didn't take the vaccine because of allergic issues or other issues. So you're hurting not only yourself, but the people around you.
Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding, I had all the COVID vaccines required. I took those.
Okay.
In some ways, I'm not so sure I should have, but I did. But the more I hear about it and learn about it, the more I question my judgment on taking those. But anyways,
I think that depends on who's giving you the information.
Well, again, that's where we come around, Paul. That the fact is, you can listen to one person on one side and the person on another side, and it comes down to you having to make the decision whether you want to believe the person on this side or you want to believe the person on that side.
I-
But
Yes,
is that your,
I agree.
is that your decision to make, or are you going to put it in the hands of the government to make that decision for you?
But if the government says, if you make X decision, you're affecting not only yourself, but the people around you. I can burn down my house. I have the right to burn down my house. Well, actually, I don't, but let's assume for the moment I can burn down my house. And okay, but what happens to the people around me, the houses around me, when they get hit with sparks, etc.?
But that statement you just made, Bob, just before you got to the house, is not. I don't think is necessarily correct.
Which is, I don't remember what I said, which is not unusual.
But something in reference to
Said that you said you could burn down your house.
No, he said
Before that.
before that. I was using the burn down the house as an example of whatever it was I said before. And I'll assume for the moment that what I said before was that you can do whatever you want to your life, but when it starts affecting the people around you, then the people around you have an interest in what you do. And part of that is what the government is supposed to deal with.
okay,
is-
but we're putting again. You said earlier that that you should be able to say whatever you want about anything. Yet
As-
you can't do what you want with your own physical body.
By the way, it's illegal to attempt suicide. It's not illegal to successfully commit suicide. It's illegally to attempt suicide, and the government enforces that. If you remember Kevorkian a
That's
number of
not
years
in all.
ago,
That's not in all states.
Washington is the only one.
I think there's at least 3 states that have assisted suicide. I think Vermont. I think Oregon. I
Yeah.
can't remember what the other states.
I thought it was Washington,
And Canada, I think, is going in that direction pretty
Right.
heartily.
but in the other
Assisted
47
suicide.
states, you were committing a crime if you commit suicide. The government has an interest in a variety of things, in some cases, too much interest. I accept the fact that there are times when the government gets too involved in people's lives.
Well,
But-
I will give you an example. In the 1940s, the major cause of death in Boston area was tuberculosis,
Was what?
and was tuberculosis, TB.
Tuberculosis. Yeah.
And the once the medications showed up, it became mandatory for patients to take the medication and and to make sure they took the medication. It was that the sheriff would show up if the patient didn't take it. And even now, I think it is the law, if somebody is diagnosed with actual because is a patient of TB, they have to take the medication to make sure they don't spread it, and it's otherwise they can be locked up. So you can see the effect of that therapy. That tuberculosis is not #1 cause of death in the greater Boston area anymore. So there you have it.
Chuck, is that a proper use of government authority? To require you to take a tuberculosis vaccine?
Medication. No, there's no
Medication.
vaccine.
Oh,
There's
okay,
no vaccine.
medication. It seems to me that when I was a kid, I took something for tuberculosis,
There
and it
a
wasn't
there is a
medication, so I
vaccine.
assume it was a vaccine.
There is a vaccine, but that is not being given in the United States.
Okay, so what was it that I took as a kid? Because I didn't have tuberculosis.
Yeah, but the vaccine that was approved was called BCG vaccine,
Okay,
and it is now given in other countries other than US. How about that?
okay. Well, Chuck, question: if we found a vaccine, using vaccines specifically as a preventative for tuberculosis, and if people if people didn't take it, then they could spread it to all kinds of other people. Would it be the proper use of government authority to do what Omanon said was done in Boston, which is to require everybody to have taken the vaccine?
I would say my initial thought is yes, as long as it was fully tested properly over a good, a proper amount of time, and that was as documented as it could be. But again, so I don't know. I mean, those are some of the questions that I think we all have to decide upon, what types of medications that are put in our bodies, to what degree have they been tested, and what's the benefit of it, not only for ourselves but for society.
Yeah, you have another example of a vaccine which is mostly given to the older people against shingles, and so your provider should have told you about that. So do you want to take shingles vaccine, or you don't want to take shingles vaccine? Because if somebody gets shingles, it's really painful.
But that's a choice.
Yeah, but it's a choice, of course.
It's not, shingles is not a contagious disease. You already, the vast majority of people already have the virus dormant in their body.
Yes.
As it happens, my wife, about 2 years ago, had all kinds of pains, etc., and eventually she went to the hospital, and she had shingles. And she had other things as well, but she had shingles. And seeing what she went through, I, who had never had any interest in taking the shingle shot, went ahead and did it. But that was individual, because there was my getting shingles or not getting shingles had no effect on anybody else.
Yeah, that's personal there.
Yeah,
I got the shingle shots myself.
Yeah.
The earlier version some years ago, and the double shot more recently. Because I saw a coworker years ago come down with shingles, and I didn't want to go through what he went through.
Mm-hmm.
But shingles is not perfect for everybody. People still get shingles even though they had the shot.
I mean, that is the problem. That's what I alluded to in the beginning itself, that what the vaccine does is not really, a lot of vaccines don't prevent. They essentially protect from the severity of it. And that's important.
This whole issue, isn't it the ability of individuals to make decisions for themselves? And that's the crux of the argument.
That's correct.
People want to be able to say exactly, they want the quote freedom to do what they want. And I think that is a major issue right now in the United States. We have people who have a very strong feeling that they can make their own decisions, and the heck with everybody else. And they're just as willing to make decisions for other people, to say you can or cannot do this. And that's what's happening right now. And it's a major problem with the United States. The freedom to do whatever you want, but also the freedom to take away other people's freedom. The freedom to have an abortion, the freedom to worship how you want to worship. That's something that's being taken away. The freedom to vote. That's being taken away by a certain group of with a particular philosophy, that they feel they have the right to do this to other people. And it's probably my my strongest feeling that they are definitely wrong, and we have to do something as a country to stop this.
By the way, I'm a big believer in what Paul is saying, but I have to look at it from another point of view. And that is, if I see something that I believe to be ultimately wrong, and I have a choice of just going about my life and letting that bad thing happen as long as it doesn't happen to me, or being a hero and doing something to try to